Just hours away from Christmas. I have a question. How many of you still need to do some Christmas shopping? Anybody? Okay, you have my permission. You can get up and go right now because you're in a situation. But if you go, you have to come to each one of our Christmas Eve services. So we'll see you at 4 right till midnight. Okay, you're welcome to do that. If you don't have all your presents yet, this is my recommendation. Go to PriceSmart or Costco. Go to Costco. Get the great big box of macaroni. Okay, and everyone gets a macaroni necklace. Okay, you thread it through. It's homemade. It's made with love and care. If they get hungry, they can eat it. Okay, it's a great gift. Great gift. I love Christmas. I think our whole culture just loves Christmas. I think they like to celebrate it. They like the presents, the tree, the gifts, the food, the turkey leftovers. We love all those things. And I think whether you're Christian or not, there's just sort of this magic of Christmas that we're all looking for. Just this feeling, this experience, this warmth, this joy that people are looking for at Christmas. And it's just filled with this wonder and magic. And it reminds me a lot of a fairy tale. Remember reading fairy tales growing up? Do you remember reading fairy tales? Yeah, okay. We read a lot of fairy tales right now at our house, and one of our favorite ones is Jack and the Beanstalk. Remember that story? This poor family, all they've got is this cow, and the cow stops making milk, and so they send Jack, go to town, sell the cow, get us some money so we can buy some food, right? And Jack takes the cow, and he's walking to town, and he comes across this person, and the person says, "Give me the cow, and I'll give you a handful of beans, the magical fruit," right? The more you eat, the better you feel. And that's how that goes, I think. Anyway, Jack trades the cow, gets his handful of beans. He goes home and says, "Look, Mom, I got some beans." She says, "Beans? That's not enough for the cow. What are you doing?" She throws the beans. She's so upset. Next morning, Jack wakes up, and there is this huge beanstalk. It goes straight up into the clouds. I mean, who knows how high up this beanstalk goes? So Jack gets up. He decides he's going to climb it like any young boy would. Climbs up this beanstalk, up into the clouds, finds this incredible mansion, this incredible palace. He goes inside of it. It's just filled with treasure, like bags of gold, this hen that can lay golden eggs, this golden magic harp. He takes the treasures, defeats the giant, brings it all back down to his family, and they're rich, and they live happily ever after, right? Because that's how a fairy tale goes. Once upon a time in a faraway land, and then wraps up, and they live happily ever after. It reminds me of another fairy tale I liked growing up, mostly because of the Disney version of it, Beauty and the Beast. Remember Beauty and the Beast? Once upon a time, there was this girl who was just so stunning, so attractive, so beautiful. They just called her Beauty. And, she was just amazing, this girl. And at the same time, there was this terrible, horrible beast. I mean, no one would go near him because it was just so awful, so terrible, this beast. And just by some twist of fate, the beauty ends up encountering the beast. And over this period of time, the beast, well, no one knows this, but inside the beast is actually a handsome young boy, this handsome prince, actually. And no one knows that, but as the beauty spends time with the beast, she starts to fall in love with him and see the good sides of him and the good characteristics of him, and then she falls in love with him, and poof, the beast is gone, and there's this handsome young prince. And some of you are saying that didn't happen to my husband, but it's because it's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale, right? Once upon a time in a faraway land, and they lived happily ever after. That's how fairy tales go. And a lot of people think about Christmas, they hear the story and think, well, that sounds a lot like a fairy tale. But it's not. We'll read the story in just a second, and I'll show you why it's different than a fairy tale and why it's better than a fairy tale. Okay, let me read this to you from, we'll look at Luke 2 this morning. If you have a Bible and want to open it up, that's great. We're just looking at a little passage in Luke 2. And just gives us a glimpse of why this story, the Christmas story, is different and better than a fairy tale. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was a governor of Syria, and everyone went to his own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and the line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. That's the Christmas story from Luke 2. Different than a fairy tale, isn't it? It doesn't start with once upon a time in a faraway land. It actually talks about, in those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. You know, it's different because this is a real person. These are real people, right? This guy, Caesar Augustus, well, he's got a fascinating story. He was just this guy, pretty average guy from a wealthy family, and his uncle was Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar, I mean, you know him. He was this great military commander, really had a huge part to play in the expansion of Rome. And on his deathbed, after he died, they read his will. Julius Caesar didn't have any heirs, no one to follow after him. And so in his will, he adopts Caesar Augustus, the man that we know now as Caesar Augustus. He adopts him. It's his nephew. He adopts him and gives him basically all of his wealth, all of his fortune, all of his titles. And so this 19-year-old boy at the time, Augustus, becomes the first emperor of Rome. It's a historical fact. We can go back and follow that all out. I mean, this is a real person, a real guy, this Caesar Augustus. This is not a fairy tale because these are real people in a real time, in a real place. I mean, we know these places and names and people. It's also not a fairy tale because that first line about Caesar Augustus issuing a decree that a census should be taken, you know what that's about? Taxes. No good fairy tale would ever be about taxes. But this guy, Caesar Augustus, they didn't know how many people were in the Roman Empire. They knew like how many towns and cities they'd conquered and that they owned. And so there was like provincial tax, and there was city taxes and town taxes that the town would pay, but he didn't know how many people were there. And he thought, if I knew exactly how many people were in that town, I could tax each and every one of them. Because he's building this empire, expanding this empire, so he needs the money. He's saying, show me the money. And so this is what he comes up with, this census to find out, how many people do I have? How many people could be paying for this empire to keep expanding? It's not fairy tale kind of stuff, is it? Real people, real taxes. I mean, it just doesn't really make for a great fairy tale. And then Joseph makes his way to Bethlehem with his wife. She's pregnant, no place to stay. So they have this baby in a stable, lay him in a manger. Different than a fairy tale, isn't it? I mean, as you read it, as you just think about it, it's so different. Not only is it different than a fairy tale, it's better than a fairy tale. Better because, I mean, just think about this. Think about how many jacks do you know who have found magic beans and found a giant in the sky with a treasure? Anyone? Okay, well, there's one hand, and I'd like to just check the facts with you. But, I don't know anyone who's found some magic beans and climbed their way up into the sky. And so, I mean, fairy tales are nice, they're exciting, they're encouraging, they're fun to read, but they just don't really happen in that kind of sense of, I'd like to retire one day. I'm not banking on the magic beans. That's just not sort of my life plan. I don't know about yours. Fairy tales are nice, but they're not real. And so the great thing about this story that we just read is it's real. This really took place in time and space and this plan that God had. And it's different because instead of us trying to find some way up into the clouds, trying to find some beanstalk or some magic path or some hidden secret way to get up to God, God comes down to us, doesn't he?